The pictures that I'm putting on screen now were all created with one tool, Neon and Glow. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can get the most out of this tool as well. I've created neon glow laser effects in Photoshop for many years now, and while I am a massive fan of Photoshop, it's so much easier to do in Luminar Neo. Because of Luminar Neo's really easy slider-based technology, it makes using the tool very intuitive, and the fact that we can leverage the AI masks to create effects really quickly makes it so much fun to play around with. You get your feedback instantly. If you want to change artistic direction, you can pivot on an instant. The bottom line is it's a lot of fun, and don't worry if you're a Photoshop user, Luminar Neo is available as a plugin for Photoshop and Lightroom, and I have a free trial for it in the description below that you can access. And if you like it and think it's a good fit for your editing workflow, I've got a discount link for you as well. Also, if you want to follow along with the examples in this video, I'll also put links to those photos in the description as well. Now, there's a lot to cover with this tool. That's why I'm calling it a masterclass. We're going to start easy. We're going to look at neon and glow individually and all of the variables within that tool. They're very simple, but there's a lot to cover. And as a final piece of the puzzle, we're going to work through a more creative edit where we're going to apply all of those tools and put them into one creative vision that you guys can work along with as well. Right, let's load Luminar Neo and get into it. Okay, let's start by looking at this example here. I have already edited it, so I'm going to go to Adjustments and I'm going to revert to Original. I'm going to jump up to the Edit module here, and to access Neon and Glow, we want to come to the Creative section here. So if all your panels are collapsed like this, you want to go into Creative and come down to Neon and Glow. And to start using the effect, it's as simple as coming over to your photo and starting to draw on it. Once we release, we get to see a neon effect. I'm going to press Ctrl-Z to get rid of that, and I'm going to put a more meaningful straight line down here. Now, one option is to try and draw a straight line, but that really is the wrong way to go about it. A much better way is to put a click at the top of the photo where you want the line to start, come down to where you want the line to finish, and we can click again, and now we have a perfectly straight line. Incidentally, that tip for creating a straight line also works when you're dealing with brushes in the masking section as well. Click once, hold shift, click somewhere else, straight line. So now we have our basic neon line. Let's have a look at the properties. So we have our basic amount slider, so we can reduce that and we can increase it as well. Within the style section, we have access to the spread, which we can boost up and give our neon effect a lovely light bleed. Not only that, we can also grab the atmosphere slider and boost that up as well. And it's a little hard to see on this photo, but the atmosphere that's being added actually has a cloud texture to it. If I put a little scribble over here, we might be able to see that a little more clearly over her jumper. So that's really showing up there, that atmosphere. If I bring it down so that we only have the spread showing, it's a very uniform glow of light. But once we start adding the atmosphere slider, you can see that we're almost adding a texture of fog, cloudiness to that photo. So that's really nice. Below that, we have the hue slider, which obviously allows us to change the color of the glow itself. And so a nice thing to do is either complement the colors that already exist in your scene. So we could go with a red cyan kind of look, or you can harmonize and try and go for red on red, stick to that warm color palette. Beyond that, we also have the ability to either brighten up or make our light whiter, or what we can do is actually reduce the amount of white in the laser itself or the neon glow. And that way, we're just going to have the pure color of whatever we're set to. So let's say we wanted to do more of a red look. That's all we're going to see, pure red. So I tend to like actually having a little bit of lightness so that you can actually see the form of the neon effect that you've created. So currently, here's our before, here's our after. Now let's say we want to get rid of this little squiggle that we did here. We can just switch over to erase, and that's going to allow us to come over with the brush and click, and you can see that the mask itself is actually blue, and I'm just painting that away. Once I've deleted it, that's completely gone. So far so good, nice and easy. That is drawing with the neon tool. And when this tool first came out, we didn't have access to that. We were relying on the AI masks only. And that functionality still exists in the tool. It's a really quick and easy way to get an effect. Let me show you how to do it. So let's open up Neon and Glow. And this time, rather than drawing anything, we're going to switch over to the object selection. Now, currently we don't see anything at all. What do we need to do? Well, we need to grab the amount slider and start bringing that up. And you can see that the AI did a little calculation and found our subject. Currently, you can see that there is a bit of a gap between the effect and the subject, which personally I'm not a big fan of that, and that is all down to this indent slider here. So what I like to do is actually bring it in until it's actually touching our subject. And just like before, we're able to play with the spread effect so we can get more of a glow going on. And we also have the ability to add that atmosphere again. Now, as you can see, this is a blue sky day, quite a high key photo. And so if you're going to have a neon or glowing effect, really the only time you're going to see that is if it's quite dark. So currently adding that atmosphere effect, we don't see too much. So to give it a bit more believability, there's another tool at our disposal. I just said disposable. Disposal. There's another tool at our disposal, and that is the glow tool. Let's take a look. But before I show you how we can solve that, I just want to solve another problem, which was when the AI actually selected our subject, it also included a little bit of extra information as well. But that's okay, because when we actually select the AI mask option here, we have the option to refine object. Currently, we're in the draw mode, so if I start drawing, it's going to add to our selection. Control Z is going to get rid of that. But if I switch to erase, I can actually come in. I'm going to reduce the brush size just by pressing my left bracket key, and I'm just going to remove the extra shape that the AI thought was part of her for some reason. So now we have a much cleaner selection on our model. Right, let's move over to the glow tool, because this is where we're going to be able to salvage the fact that this is high key. What we want to do is select the inner rather than the outer option, and I'll explain both of these very soon. But the first thing we could do with the inner option is come to background, and now if I start reducing this slider down, it's actually just going to darken our photo. So now we have a logical reason as to why we would see the atmosphere glowing. Now, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to go pretty heavy-handed with these effects, purely so that you guys can clearly see what all the sliders are doing. You might want to do this with a little bit more refinement, or you might want to just go heavy-handed. It's totally up to you. My encouragement is just play around with it. It's a lot of fun just to dive into this tool. Now, one really nice thing is with any instance of the tool, we are not confined only to the drawing version of the neon tool or the object selection version, which we've done here. We can actually combine both. And so let me just demonstrate that to you quickly. Let's suppose that she wants a heart around her. Oh dear, that's not looking good. Now that is a pretty terribly drawn heart, and I think a 3-year-old could have done better. So here's the thing, when I'm doing these tutorials, I'm always drawing and doing everything with a mouse just to demonstrate that everything I do in these Neo tutorials, you can do if all you have is a mouse. However, if you want to get the most out of working with brushes, drawing masks, things like that, you really want to get hold of a tablet. People often ask me which tablet I use. This is the 𝗦𝗶𝗰cie𝗁𝗄 Pro. This is the medium size, great build, love this tablet. However, it's not the cheapest, and I do have another option. So I would thoroughly recommend checking out 𝗣𝗶𝗄𝗴. This is not a sponsored post or anything. These guys just make really great tablets at an affordable price. So I love my Wacom, but I love this as well. Anyway, let's see if we can't get a better result using the tablet. All right, here we go. Oh, look, it's far from perfect, but I think that's a lot better than what we had. But of course, we're not confined to just solid lines. So here, I'm just going to place a few strategic dots and visualize a heart as I go. So by the time I'm done, we should see the form of a heart. Okay, let's open up a new example and we can dive deeper into the inner and outer glow. So I'm just going to reset this one back to its original state. I'm just going to open up the neon and glow effect, and we're just going to work with glow only in this one. So as I said, we have an inner and an outer option. So the first thing to do to get a feel for what's going on is just crank the amount slider up. So we can clearly see that the AI has recognized where our subject is and actually applied a mask to him. If the mask isn't perfect, like in the bottom corner here, we can refine the object and actually add to that mask if we wish. And we also have the ability to erase the mask as well. So I don't really think of the inner options here as part of the glow feature itself. Rather, it's giving us the ability to actually tone the color of our subject to match whatever glow we want in the scene. So if I choose more of a green look here, because we've got this green binary effect going on in the background, that's what I'm able to work into my subject. Now, obviously, we don't want him looking like the Incredible Hulk. We're not going to have this set to 100, but as I've explained before, just having that amount set a little bit higher is going to help us to clearly visualize what each of these sliders is doing. So if we reduce the whiteness, we are therefore pumping more of this hue into our subject. But if we start bringing it up, it's going to desaturate that color that we're introducing. So we can kind of find a sweet spot somewhere in there. Not only can we whiten the color, but we can actually just brighten the overall effect as well. So if you do want to illuminate your subject slightly more, we can do that by pumping up the brightness. I'm not going to worry about it for this one, but we've also got options to play with the contrast. And as I showed you in the previous example, we can actually darken down the background. And that can actually be a really useful tool just so that our glow effect or our neon effect is going to show up more believably. So let's suppose this is the effect that we've created that we want to apply to our photo, but we don't want it 100%. So I can bring it all the way down and see our original, and then I can start to bring that in. But you'll notice something that happens. We have the amount slider, which is affecting that inner glow, but the background slider itself is actually its own separate entity. If I play around with that background slider and then move the amount, the background itself isn't changing, only that inner light. So we really need to be mindful of that. So I'm going to reduce the effect that we've created based on what I want it to look like on our subject. And now I'm just going to tweak that background amount independently. Let's go for something like that. So now we can see our before and our after. Before and after. Not a huge change, but let's switch over to the outer glow, and this is where we can really start to give our guy a holy Jesus look, or Obi-Wan Kenobi if we want to change the hue. So this is actually quite a nice tool to play around with if you just want to bring a little more emphasis to your subject. So we don't have to be like really heavy-handed with this glow effect, but we can just use it to give a little bit more pop. So let's give him that green glow. Let's increase the size amount so we have a nice feathering off of that effect. And once we're happy with that overall look of it, we can just bring that amount slider down again. So this is none of the effect, and this is with a little bit of that effect popped in. You know, something like that might be a nice change. So here's our before. Here's our after with both the inner and the outer glow, before and after. And it's just added just a little bit more interest to this photo. Now, because you're an astute viewer, you would have noticed that there's also another entry in that dialog box called Sparkles. And it's not my favourite tool, but I'd be remiss if I don't show you. So let me just demonstrate what that does exactly. So let's click on Sparkles. That's going to give us the option to add the amount. So as you can see, we're starting to get a bit of a sparkly starfield kind of look going on. I'll crank the spread right the way up. And as you can see, this option is adding in a kind of starfield into the actual glow itself, so we can change the hue of that. So if we did want to put this effect in and match it in with the greens, we can do that. So that concludes our overview of how to actually use the neon and glow tools. Now I think you're ready to dive into a more complex tutorial example where we're going to bring all of this creative goodness together and actually create something unique. And don't forget, you're able to download this photo from the link in the description. And those of you who are kind enough to support me with the Members Plus downloads option, you have access to all of these photos, and I'll put my finished edits in our shared resource folder as well. Right, I'm really excited, so let's get into our final edit and bring all of these tools together. So we'll be working on this photo by Nardo, which was actually designed as a phone background. So the first thing I'd like to do is crop this photo down and then actually add something extra to the left-hand side. So I'm going to jump into the Crop AI tool, change over to a freeform ratio, and that enables me just to drag these handles around. So we're going to lose some of the top, I'm going to apply that. And now I want to add pixels to the left. But I don't want to add just blank background pixels. What I'm wanting to do is give this guy a reason to be looking, like what's he looking at? And I think he should be looking at something futuristic, maybe a portal into another world that will give us an excuse to use these glowing tools. So I'm going to use the AI intelligence to actually expand this with what I envisage. So I'm going to jump to the catalog section, Gen Expand, and I'm going to pull this over to the left-hand side. I'm just going to hit expand and see what the AI does. And that's given us quite an interesting result. So I'm going to save that, but we haven't expanded it quite as far as I would like. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to rerun that tool, and that's going to enable me to push this further. That addition there is the most I can go to. Because I want some sort of futuristic machine with a portal, That is exactly the prompt I'm going to write in that description field and hope that the AI gives me something to work with, and it certainly has. So this is pretty much perfect for what I was hoping for. So I'm just going to click save, and this is going to be our base image to work on. Now, before I start working with neon and glow, the first thing I'd like to do is change the color of this glow that's here already from orange to blue. And we can do that if we jump into the essentials and come into the color palette here. And if I drop down the hue, saturation and luminance, at the very bottom I can shift the hue. Now as I move this is going to change the hue or colour of the whole photo. But basically all I want to do is be mindful of this orange area here, or which is now blue, because that is what I'm going to mask in. So I'm going to use a radial gradient because that should get me pretty close to covering that orange area. So that's one of them taken care of. And now I'm just going to re-invoke the radial gradient, which will allow me to draw a second radial gradient, adding to the first one. And now if I close that down, we can see that we've changed the orange hue. And so now we have a nice turquoise blue, which ties in much better with our original photo. And so I'm going to try working with that harmony of that color palette. And so all of my glow effects, all of my neon is going to be imbued with a blue hue. So before we start applying the neon and glow tool to this photo, it's always good to have a game plan when you're doing your edit. And so for me, what I'd like to do is enhance this little cross that he has going on in his headphones here, give that a glow. Also, I'd like to tone in the glow that we have over here, accentuate that, and maybe even add some kind of lightning effect coming out from here. So I'll show you how we can do all of that. One thing I'd also like to do is give this guy just a little bit of separation from the background, and I intend to do that by adding the outer glow just to give him a bit of pop. Maybe also add some atmosphere in here as well. So let's kick things off by looking at the headphones here. So I explained earlier how we can click in one place, hold shift, click in a secondary place, and that will draw a dead straight line between those 2 points. So I'm just going over the top of the pre-existing X. Now we have that neon and glow effect. The first thing I'd like to do is choose a color which is going to balance better with my photo. So as I drop this down, I'm just being mindful of that number there. Let's say 225. I'm going to remember that so I can reuse that color in any subsequent editions of this tool. Let's give this just a little bit more spread so we're going a bit more heavy-handed. And you can see if I push this all the way to 100, that's already bleeding that effect right the way over his face. So I might just go with that and just maybe drop the amount down slightly. Let's toggle our before and after. Okay, good start. Now I'm going to close that down and reopen a brand new instance of the tool. So that's going to allow me to apply a brand new effect with completely different parameters. So the next thing I'd like to do is actually give our character a bit of a glow as well. So rather than working with neon, this time I'm going to work with glow. And the first thing I like to do is just grab that amount slider and start pulling that up. Now you can see in this instance, it's not done the best mask for us, which is a bit of a shame, but that's okay. We have the option to refine that mask. So I'm just going to push this quite high so I can still see him and draw over the top of our character to add into that mask. Now I don't need to be super precise with this because we're dealing with a glow. It doesn't matter that I'm bleeding over his hairline slightly here. It's just going to look like the light is wrapping around him. Now obviously this is not the color we want to use, so let's come back in, and if I remember rightly we were working with 225. But to be honest, that's a little bit more blue than I was hoping for. Let's push this down a little bit more towards the greens. We're just going for color harmony with this. We don't need it to be an exact match. Now, if I grab the size slider and start playing with that, we can see what's going on here. We could literally fill that whole background with that glow. Now, let's say we're kind of flip-flopping between the idea of much more of a glow or a tighter glow. What if we actually wanted to leverage both styles of glow? Well, we can absolutely do that. What I'm going to do is just reduce the amount of this tight glow around him and maybe make that just a little bit brighter by introducing the white. Let's go with something like that, drop the amount again. Right, I'm going to close this tool down and open up a brand new tool again. So a new instance of the glow tool, come into glow, crank that amount up, and this time change the hue to something we're after, something like that. And push the size slightly bigger this time. I'm going to make sure I refine my object by adding to the mask and making sure that it knows where our subject is. Now for this next bit, I'm going to need you to pay attention because this is actually really important, but it is a little bit more complex, and it's understanding the way masks are working. You may have wondered, because we have this option to refine object and we can work with a mask, why do we have a secondary masking tab? Well, it's because the refine object mask is speaking directly into the tool and defining where a subject is to allow the tool to do its magic and add a glow around it. And the mask then acts as the whole layer to remove or add certain elements that you want. So in this example, let's say that I want the glow around the guy who's staring at the portal, but I don't want that glow coming out from the portal right now as well. And that's where access to our traditional masking tools comes in to enable us to quickly solve that issue. Let me show you how that works. Let's do a quick before and after to actually see the effect that we've created. And now I'm going to come into the masking section, and here we can see all of our familiar masking options. For this one, I'm going to go to linear gradient, and I'm just going to draw a linear gradient across. Now, the area that is red in a mask actually is the area that is revealed. So if I close the masking option down, you can see that we have the opposite of what I was after, which is the portal is glowing. But that's fine. We could have either dragged our linear gradient the other way, but I just wanted to show you how this works. We also have access to mask actions, so we can invert the mask. So we can just flip the mask around. So now it's over the guy as I was hoping for, but the effect is way over the top. So I'm just going to jump back into this glow tool itself. And now I'm going to grab the amount slider and just have a little play with this until I put it where I'm kind of a bit more happy with it. Now, as I close this down and open up a new instance of the tool, the edits that we've already applied haven't disappeared. They've jumped into the edit section. So if I actually click the edit section, you can see that we have 3 neon and glow tools applied. The first one was for the headphones. The second one added a slight glow around both of our subjects, and the third one was more of an overall glow just on the guy. So what I'd like to do is just jump back to this secondary one and just reduce the effect of that slightly as well. Okay, I've reduced both of those effects quite considerably. Let's look at our before and our after. Okay, we're looking good. Let's move on. What I'd like to do now is add a glow to these portal areas. I'm going to work with this bottom one actually, because to be fair, the AI has already done a pretty good job of adding some kind of glow effect in there anyway. So how about we work with what the AI has given us and the circle that we have going on here that I'm really inaccurately drawing around because again I'm using my mouse. How about we just paint in a mask? I'm not releasing yet. We're going to have a neon effect added to this. Oh my gosh, and that is why I use a tablet. Okay, it's a bit higgledy-piggledy, but it's okay. Now for this one, what I'm going to do is actually keep the hue as it is because it's going to be slightly easier to see the actual effect we're creating than if I were matching to the color that's already there. So let's go for a nice red or something. And we're going to bump up the amount. I want to be quite intense with this. And now let's also add the atmosphere. And you can see as I bring the atmosphere up, it's really intensifying a glow coming from here. Now, as I mentioned before, not only is it nice to harmonize your colors, but sometimes it's nice to play into the complementary colors. So we could easily do a blue-orange complementary scheme, but I'm just going to keep things all in the same color palette here and work with this cyan color I've got going on here. By taking away the whiteness, we're just left with that more pure color, but I quite like the idea of this glowing more intensely. So let's set that somewhere around there. Maybe even bring the atmosphere up even higher. It's pushing it a little bit too far. Let's see, before and after, before and after. If we want to double down on that neon glowing effect, we can just add a brand new instance. And what I might do here is just click once in the center right there. And that's going to enable me to have a whole new instance to play around with. I know I've only put one dot here, but if I push the atmosphere far enough and the spread far enough, it's going to enable me to add another glowing element that I have full control over. So for this one, I'm currently white as white can be. I want to bring this down into that bluey zone. So I'm going to reduce the white amount. And here I want an intense glow around this area, hence the reason I've bumped up my spread and my atmosphere, but I don't want it to infiltrate the whole photo. So again, coming into our masking options is going to allow me to localize that effect. So I'm going to use a radial gradient just to click in the center here and just draw. So wherever I put this red mask, That's where we're going to see that effect I just created. So let's come out of that tool, and now we can see our before and our after, before and after. Now I'd be quite happy to leave this kind of sci-fi image right where it is, but I'm going to go one step further just so you guys can get another appreciation for this tool. We're going to add some lightning coming out of the portal. Again, we need a new instance of neon and glow, so just close the previous tool, click on the palette heading to open up a new one, and we are able to start drawing. So I'm going to freestyle this with my mouse again, so this could go terribly wrong, and I'm just doing some jaggedy lines that I'm going to envisage our lightning coming out from our portal. Now I currently feel like we've almost got two elements within this photo and they're quite separate, so I'm going to bring the lightning over and actually connect that to our character here. Now I have the lightning where I want it. It's time to finesse the tool and give it the look I'm after. Let's go with something like that, and now it's time for my favorite part, which is to look at our before and our after. Before and after. So a final and very important word about neon and glow. Hopefully you can see just how powerful this tool can be, but you may be thinking, this is very stylized, this approach. I don't know if this is for me. Maybe it's not. I'd still encourage you to play around with it, because there are actually very practical applications for real-world photography. So one example that springs to mind for you landscape photographers is, suppose you photographed a waterfall and there's a spray at the bottom and you want to add more atmosphere, misty, fog goodness. What better tool to do it than utilizing the neon effect here, which has the atmosphere slider. So you could actually use the neon tool and tap into that atmosphere slider to create the atmosphere, and then just use your masks to erase the actual neon stripe that you would have seen otherwise. So with a bit of creative thinking, it's quite a versatile tool. It's pretty mind-blowing to think we only used one tool to create this effect, but there is so much more available to us in Luminar Neo. One of those things is layers and understanding how blend modes affect what's underneath. If you'd like to see a video I put together explaining how to use blend modes with layers, why don't you check that out right there. And if you enjoyed this video and haven't subscribed to the channel yet, you can do that by clicking the AT button right there. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, guys.